David Lynch is a character. He's a goofy little guy.
He's a character on the Cleveland show specifically.
Is he?
Yeah, that's what my background is. It's he had a recurring role in the Cleveland show.
Okay, so this was actually like they went back to this bit multiple times.
Yeah, no, he was like a full character.
Okay. And but like called David Lynch?
I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure he was.
I mean, they do have a history. Obviously, they had Adam West in the standard Family Guy. So with the spinoff, they needed to get an equally interesting, strange cameo, reoccurring character. So why not David Lynch
Yeah.
as a bartender who
So
was
yeah, he plays the role of Gus, the bartender at the Broken Stool,
look at that.
who looks exactly and sounds like David Lynch.
Interesting that he would willingly play Gus the bartender in the Cleveland show, but he would gripe at the idea of playing, and I can't remember his character name, but in the Fablemans. Like he had to be convinced by
Oh,
Laura
John
Dern
Ford.
to take it. Yeah, John Ford. And I'm like, why is it that Steven Spielberg and the Fablemans is less of a draw than the Cleveland show?
He's got taste, that's why.
Yeah, so I did forget to account for taste.
Dude, who knows what goes on that man's head?
You guys just want to get right into it since we're already
Sure.
talking.
I think that's a great idea.
Holy shit, I'm gonna come.
Because I just went gay all of a sudden.
Paps Blue Ribbon!
I'm Charles Foster Kane.
Snap out of it! Ahoy, sexy!
It's showtime, folks.
What is up, Criteria Cats? You are listening to Criteria Cast, the podcast you recommend to girls on the first date. I am your substitute host, AJ.
I'm your other host, Noah.
And the person who should be our main host, Gabe, is out for this episode because he has to go take a stinky final, which is sad because this is actually the movie he picked. So thanks for nothing, Gabe. But don't worry, because in his place, we have the one and only Danny Kane to talk about David Lynch's Eraserhead, which is what we're talking about.
Hi, I'm Gabe. How's it going?
Hey,
Wait,
Gabe.
what?
Yeah, no, I finished my final. I ran right over because I mean, like, I'm so excited to talk about Eraserhead. That's why I picked it.
You're Gabe Earth 362 or whatever.
Exactly.
Wait,
I'm
wait, you look a little
animated in
different,
actually
dude.
3 cell time. That's my little universe differential.
Yeah, in your universe, Eraserhead is just like a normal movie.
Yeah, Eraserhead is so mainstream.
It's like kind of a normie pick.
Yeah, no. There's this real indie director called Quentin Tarantino in my world. I don't know if he's got like a version of himself over where you guys are. But yeah, no, that guy, he's underground. Oh, you got to check him out.
Yeah, he's kind of like Sam Levinson, right? They're kind of the same vibe.
Yeah, very similar, very similar. Though he does do like very straightforward Christian films. Yeah, like God's Dead 2, God's Dead 3, The Return.
He's back.
Yeah, no. Well, it's actually he's not back because he's still dead.
He's still dead. Army of the Undead is about God.
Yes. It's set in Las Vegas. No, in my world, I guess it would be set in Reno
It's just set in Cleveland.
with David Lynch as Gus.
Yes, we'll get into that. But anyway, so the movie we are talking about today is David Lynch's surreal horror dark comedy masterpiece, Eraserhead. It was his debut film. And we'll talk about the plot, the production, analysis, trivia, all that. But just starting out, what are some initial thoughts?
Um, it's weird as shit, and I love it for it. No, I feel like David Lynch is a painter first and foremost before he's a filmmaker. And even as a painter, he's almost more of a sculptor because all of his work is like three-dimensional. It comes out of the canvas. And so the best way to look at Eraserhead in my mind is a moving sculpture that he creates in his basement, laboratory. And it's just like it is a perfect one-to-one from his brain onto the screen.
Dude, I think it's funny that he's a painter first because his like paint. I think I'm not a visual artist, but I think his paintings are fucking terrible. Like I think they're so ugly to look at. Like I hate them.
Damn, I never looked them up. I just assumed they were good. Now I gotta
It's
see.
like-
You're not incorrect, but at the same time, I look at them not in like, is this good or is this bad? I look at it in like, was he able to get the thought in his brain, whatever that was, onto the page
Yeah, like
correctly?
how successful was he at that? Yeah.
And when I look at it, I'm like, I have to believe that that is correct.
I kind of
Yeah, I
vibe
mean,
with
like,
them.
What do you think
There's
he's like conveying with these?
I mean, I think he's just got a lot going on. He's one of those people who, in the like nature versus nurture debate, he is a complete like data point that's off the grid because he grew up in, the Midwest, in the suburbs, in the like 50s and 60s, with loving parents, a solid foundation, good friends, good family support. Like he grew up in the idealistic world and he developed this mind that is so fixated on the macabre and the grotesque and the dark. And so it's just like, where did that come from? We don't know. But even to this day, he's
I mean,
fine.
it
Like
came
he's
from that exact spot. That's basically what Blue Velvet is. It's like
Yeah, I
the
was
white
gonna
picket
say.
house, but then there's just horrible sex crimes and severed ears.
Well, yeah, I mean a lot of the grotesque shit actually came from, and this is kind of was his experience in like I think it was Philadelphia.
Yeah, I
He
have
was
a
just
quote on hand that I've just been
yeah,
waiting to do, but
he was like, I don't know how I feel about that because he's just kind of like, ew, it's kind of Taxi Driver esque his attitude towards Philadelphia. It's like there's filth everywhere. It's
he said there was
It's kind of
violence,
like a
hate, and
very
filth.
very like privileged white dude who like
Yeah.
sees, like a homeless guy one time and then he's like, "Oh shit, dude, the world's fucked up. I'm going to start making some grimy movies."
He saw more than that. I'm going to read the quote he had in describing Philadelphia. I saw so many things in Philadelphia I couldn't believe. I saw a grown woman grab her breasts and speak like a baby, complaining her nipples hurt. This kind of thing will set you back.
I mean, yeah,
if
it's
if
like
you've never heard him actually speak that quote, it's so great because he does follow it up by going, "My nipples hurt, my nipples hurt," and
Whoa,
it's
David, where'd you get here?
it can stay with him. I also like he's talked about that. He's talked about like saying hello to a woman on the street that was with her son, and he was like, "How's it going?" And he said that her response was to mockingly repeat him by going like, "How's it going?" And then to like turn to her son and say, "If you ever turn out like that, I'll kill you." So he's either magnetically drawn to just like cosmic darkness and weirdness, or he has a viewpoint that is like he sees all of the weird stuff going on and that's what he fixates on. And there could be rainbows and
yeah.
butterflies right next to him that he's just not noticing.
I mean, I'm just putting myself in his shoes for a second, right? Like he goes from having this like idyllic childhood where he's like everything's perfect, he has no conception of the real world or like all the fucked up shit that's going on around him, and then he gets exposed to all of it suddenly in Philadelphia. Like I can imagine the psychological effect that probably had on him. There's a reason he makes the shit he does, and that's why, And to a lesser extent, I had like somewhat of a experience in that vein when I first came to LA because I saw this like literally the first night I was there. I watched this dude like overdose on this fucking like bench outside my house, and then the ambulances came and shit, and it was just like, whoa, dude, I ain't seen nothing like that in Iowa.
An old Iowa.
Yeah. So I
I
get
think
it.
it's very clear that his time in Philadelphia was very influential on Eraserhead, but I think his like perspective on cities also goes back to the short year he spent in Boston. Because when he left the Midwest, when he left Iowa for the first time, um, or wait, no, where was he? I can't remember the exact
Ugh.
state.
I was like, he's
Uh,
one of ours?
yeah, no, because he
It's
was
not
he
one
was
of us.
born in Montana, and then he grew up in Idaho, and I think they moved to Spokane, and he was in Spokane for the longest time, I think. But he first went to Boston for college, and he spent only a year there before he dropped out and kind of did some young adult life searching, tried going to Europe for 3 years and ended up coming back 2 weeks later. But his time in Boston, he said that he was just like depressed. Like he never used the word depressed, but he described every telltale sign of being like, I never left my apartment. I would sit like in a chair until my radio ran out of batteries. It took all of his willpower to even go to school before he ended up finally dropping out. And so it's like it is clear that when he left his world of childhood and came to a city for the first time that he was drawn to, and it was such a negative experience. And then he kind of did some life searching and eventually landed in Philadelphia. Like to then have Philadelphia be, crumbling infrastructure. He described it having like a sickness in the air,
Yeah.
and it had an environment of like fear and sadness. Is like it would make sense to that be like he would have to kind of descend into this very negative mind space as a response.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
It's also
All right.
it's interesting that like his timeline in Philadelphia is a inverse of his character's timeline in Eraserhead. Because in Eraserhead, we follow Henry, who is a print. He works in like print and textiles, and then he meets Mary. They have a kid together, and then they start living together.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, he met Mary in Philadelphia. She moved in. They had a kid together, and in response to having a kid, he got a job in printing.
Hmm.
Which I'm gonna start going over the plot for those of you listening to this who haven't seen Eraserhead. Which I'm not gonna poo-poo anyone for not watching or finishing Eraserhead. It's definitely not a movie for a lot of people, and I can fully understand that. But
A direct quote from our dear friend Sam Pineless is, "It's fine, no strong feelings."
wow, we need to get him on the pod. All right, so I'm gonna read the Wikipedia plot summary. These are not my own words. Try to keep up. All right, so it opens with the man on the planet is moving levers in his home in space while the head of Henry Spencer floats in the sky. A good way to start a movie,
Yeah.
A spermatozoon-like creature emerges from Spencer's mouth, floating into the void. Which is like, that's David Lynch's version of a sex scene, is someone pulls a lever and then like a weird spermy gloop falls into a puddle.
Until we get his actual version of a sex scene later on in the movie.
It was pretty hot, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have thoughts and opinions and theories about this whole opening sequence that we can return to later, or I can espouse.
You can cook on it now, man.
So there is a painting that David Lynch has created that is called "This Man Was Shot 0.9 something 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 seconds ago," and it's a guy, and he literally looks like he's made out of like rotten meat. But it's clear that he's been shot from the like back, and his just whole chest has exploded outward, and it's this gruesome, gruesome painting. And there is this almost a identical to the, as they call it, spermioid creature, this like worm that's coming out of the wound, and there's an arrow pointing to it on the painting that's labels it as his spirit. And so it's like, oh, this is his spirit leaving his body. So as soon as I saw that in the opening shot, a sequence, having rewatched it earlier, I was like, oh, if I'm David Lynch, that is his spirit leaving his body upon some kind of big moment. And I think the specific moment we're watching is when he learns that he's becoming a father. And that is his spirit leaving his body, and then he'll have to rebuild his spirit later, which is the tiny, tiny worm throughout the movie after he has become a father. That's
Or
kind of
maybe-
like the death of his last life, rebirth into this new zone of life.
I was gonna say, this kind of sounds like David Lynch is one of those guys on Reddit who like doesn't jerk off because they don't want to deplete their energy. It's like, you lose part of your soul every time you come.
I mean,
You don't understand. That's energy.
He is very like spiritually oriented, so that would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, he doesn't jerk off, he just meditates.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all.
No.
All right, so then we go to an industrial cityscape where Spencer, who is our titular hero, I will always just refer to him as like Spencer Eraserhead or John Eraserhead because that's just what I assumed his name was. He walks home with his groceries and is stopped outside his apartment by the beautiful girl across the hall, who informs him that his girlfriend, Mary X, has invited him to dinner with her family. They have a very kooky and tense and darkly funny dinner scene. I was laughing a lot during that part. I know people think it's like weird and gross and off-putting, but I think this movie is fucking hilarious.
If you
It is.
watch the dad, if you watch Bill at all, you're like, oh, this is a comedy. At least in
Yeah,
some form, this is meant to be funny.
It's one of
Like,
those where it's like, this is so fucking weird that it's hilarious. It's like hilariously weird.
yeah.
yeah.
It's that part where like the grandma just like starts screaming and runs out, and the dad just goes, "She'll be all right."
That scene is so sexually charged in a very weird way.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's kind of because it's like, the basis of the scene is that, Mary and Spencer Racerhead have, they've had sex and there's this baby off to the side that's, we have yet to reveal it. But like when they're at the dinner scene, like dinner table, and Razorhead goes to cut the chicken and it starts just shitting black ooze.
Hmm.
Also, what is your cursing tolerance on this podcast? Just
Say
checking.
whatever you want.
Excellent. So it's spewing black bile, and like the mom starts to essentially climax. Like the beginning of her hysteric outburst is very sexual. There's a lot of like moaning and like leaning of the head back. There's this like gyration, and then towards the end of it, it devolves into crying before she takes off. And Bill's incredible line, she'll get, she's like, she'll be all right. And then later on, when she then accuses him, or not isn't accusing him, but interrogating him of like, have you had sexual intercourse? Have you had sexual intercourse with Mary? She gets so up into his space and essentially starts like making out with his neck. And Mary literally has to like pull her off before she's like, oh, sorry. So there's this baby. And it's just, you can tell that this woman is so sexually repressed. Her and her husband have not finished in the same building as each other in the last 50 years. Like there's just this weird level of tension because it's like her main like focus isn't sexual, but it's there. It's bubbling under the surface for her that she's like trying to contain and keep off to the side.
There's always kind of like an underlying level of horniness to David Lynch's movies, from
Yeah.
at least the ones that I've seen. There's always just a little level kind of on the top of his weird sexuality.
And I
David Lynch is horny as
strongly believe
fuck.
that there is a reason for that in like combining both the horny and the like absurd surreal weirdness. And it's because the very first like weird encounter of his life was when he hadn't left Idaho yet for Spokane. And he said he was like coming home. He's like a young kid, maybe like, 7 or 8, and walking home, emerging out of like the darkness is like a naked woman with a bloody mouth. And like
Huh.
him and his siblings and friends are just like, oh, what?
That happened
And
in
like,
that happened in Blue Velvet.
exactly. He loves to literally just pull scenes from his life and put them into his
Yeah, you
movie.
know, right what you know.
Exactly. And it's like, I think that moment to him was both an awakening in the like, oh, this is sexual because I'm seeing a naked adult woman for the very first time. And it is also like absurd because she is crying, wandering around outside, and has a bloody mouth, which as a child, he doesn't fully understand what that means. But we can understand the context of like, clearly something bad has happened. And so that must have been a foundational, as he says, with the Philadelphia line of like, it sticks with you.
Hmm. God, I would give anything to see David Lynch's Fablemans. Like, what made him fall in love with the movies?
Oh, that would be a nightmare of a time.
I saw a man jack off into a storm drain. Like, that was probably what it'd be. Moving
Dude,
on. So,
oh, I was gonna ask real quick, if have you guys seen Wild at Heart?
No.
no.
That is one of the horniest movies I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah, no, I've seen the production stills.
Yeah, Laura Dern. It's kind of, yeah, it is interesting. He plays with a lot of themes of like sexual repression in his movies. Because in Wild at Heart, Laura Dern's character has these super strict Christian parents, but she's having this like sexual revolution where she's just fucking her boyfriend Nicolas Cage every chance she can get. She's just on this wild joyride, this sexually charged joyride. And then in Blue Velvet, you know, and there's also a lot of this like sexual repression, and there's like sexual awakening
There's a
happening.
fucking knife point
Kyle
blowjob.
MacLachlan. Yeah, Kyle MacLachlan gets, or not, is that what his fucking name is?
Yeah, Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, he gets awakened to sorry, my cat's going goblin mode over here. He gets awakened to like the, like, I guess not the dark side of sexuality, but like he loses his like vanilla like status. There's a lot of like, that's a lot of David Lynch shit. David Lynch plays with is shit that you repress.
What if we found out David Lynch is actually the most like basic person in the bedroom, and this is all just us projecting that? Oh, he must be horny because people in his movies are.
Well, it's
No,
definitely clear. The first time I like really got a read on David Lynch, I was like, this man is ace. This man does not fuck. There's like not a sexual bone in this guy's body. And then I saw any of his work, and I was like, I was wrong.
He's the opposite of Ace. He's the
Yeah.
Chad. He's the Chad of the. It's the Virgin Tarkovsky versus the Chad David Lynch.
He could easily be the most vanilla when it comes to like the actual performance, but he's upstairs. He's doing some bullshit.
Some freaky shit.
dude, he is. I'm. David Lynch is fucking. He's been fucking. Keep fucking.
There's no lie there.
All right, moving on to the second paragraph. So they found out that his girlfriend gave birth. They're not sure if it's a baby. It's been born with a horrible defect, and then they find out that they gave birth to the Eraserhead baby. But yeah, so the Mary moves into Spencer's one-room apartment, and they start taking care of the child. The child screams and yells and all that stuff that crazy babies do. On top of it, also being a weird alien cow fetus thing. So Mary gets fed up. She leaves, leaving Spencer alone. From here, I'm going to have to read the Wikipedia because it's just going to sound like stream of consciousness if I don't. Spencer begins experiencing visions, again seeing the man in the planet, as well as the lady in the radiator. Oh yeah, there's also a lady in the radiator with like mashed potato cheeks who sings "In Heaven." In heaven. Wait, no, that's cheek to cheek. No, you fucked me up with singing cheek to cheek. Now I can't do "In Heaven."
Heaven,
I'm in heaven, and my heart
There's
beats
heaven
so.
somewhere is and I'm there. In heaven is me.
Yeah, those are the words. But he has another vision. The lady in the radiator sings as Spencer watches his own head fall off, revealing a stump underneath that resembles the child's face. This is just natural story progression, if you can't tell.
Absolutely.
Spencer's head falls from the sky, landing on the street and breaking open. A boy finds it, bringing it to a pencil factory, as one does, to be turned into erasers.
Right.
It's kind of funny that the title comes from a scene that like fully does not like go with anything else in the narrative at all.
And here's the thing: is that scene is the basis of the entire movie because that was the daydream he had before he wrote anything.
Wait, you're telling me he based this on a dream?
Not just a dream, a daydream. That man was sitting on a fucking street corner or something, just going, "What if a head fell off and like a little kid came in and picked it up, and where does that little kid go? A pencil factory." You're like, yeah,
That's a good idea. I'll make
genius
this movie
over
over
here.
the course of 8 years.
Yeah, man, I really want to hear his internal dialogue when he's like during his creative process. It's like, and then, ooh, that's good. A giant spermatosa is gonna fall from the sky. We're gonna create a wrinkly penis baby that's radioactive. You know, it's like,
Yeah, these all sound like good story beats to me.
yeah,
A natural progression, an A to B.
Yeah. Look, if
Very-
you want a fucking A to B and you're watching David Lynch, like that's on you, buddy. Which even then, like he had like Blue Velvet. The first time I saw it, I was shocked by how just linear the story is. Like it's just a story from beginning to end. Because I had seen Eraserhead before this, so I was like, oh, it's gonna be weird crap. And you know, there's like some weird crap in it, but it's like fully their characters. There's a storyline. There's action, rising action, climax. So anyone who's like, he just puts like weird visuals in for no reason is a stupid baby, and we're done with them.
Blue Velvet's probably my favorite of his.
Same.
Honestly. Mulholland Drive though is pretty up there. Even though it's like definitely very like seemingly random imagery.
Yeah.
That is a great fucking movie.
I know that film purists would argue with me, but I'm like, my favorite movie that David Lynch has ever made is season 1 of Twin Peaks.
I haven't finished it yet, but I do fuck with it. It's
I
hilarious.
mean, yeah, I will say that season two goes a little off the rails. Uh, they get back a little bit before the end of the season. But season one is one of those just like all timers. Like there's pretty much this. If you tossed it into the ocean, it would float.
But did they so did he stick with the soap opera style like throughout the whole thing? Like was Fire Walk with Me, was that also soap opera like? Because it's
Soap
so
opera.
renowned amongst like letterboxed people.
Yeah, no, Firewalk with Me breaks away from it, but I mean they kind of keep the soap opera element. Like I mean he makes it his own. Like it's so funny to think of Twin Peaks in that like, the network TV-esque genre like of soap opera because it's so its own show, but it still
Hmm.
kind of does sit within those confines a little bit.
Hmm.
I am unfortunately not as versed in all of his work. Like I've never seen Mulholland Drive and I've never seen Magnolia, which are the two most talked about movies he's made. Um, but unfortunately I'm a fake fan.
No, it's all good. Magnolia is Paul Thomas Anderson. Are you sure you're not? Are you thinking about a different one?
I am thinking about a different one, and I love that I just said that with my full chest.
No, no, dude.
I'll
I'm not
double
trying
it.
to. No, I'm just trying to figure out which one you were talking about. Because hold on, I'm pulling up his filmography right
Yeah,
now.
me too.
Inland Empire, The Elephant Man, The Straight Story. I'm thinking of top of my head. What other Lynch's
Lost
Oh yeah, that's what
Highway.
I got it mixed up with. Dune. I was
Oh,
thinking of
Dune.
Dune.
fucking
Yeah, that's right.
Dune?
Never seen it.
Looks bad.
It it's
It
I
does
mean,
look bad.
yes,
It looks fucking terrible.
it is like atrocious. Yeah. Should you watch it? 100%. Like
Yeah,
absolutely. It's bad. Yes.
dude.
I'll
So is
watch
the
it before
villain
I see
too.
Tune, which is what I'm calling Dune 2. I'm calling it Tune.
Dude, that
That,
both.
that
Then
that's a
I
good
guess they're
movie.
both dog shit. Because the new I don't like the new one either. It's very. This is such a again. I've said this before. This is a bonehead thing to say, but it's just so fucking boring, man. It's like boring as fuck. I tried to watch it three separate times and I fell asleep all three times.
You're
Finished it
talking
the third
about
time.
Dwan, which is what I call
One,
Dune
yeah.
1.
Dude, they literally the 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 line although the line there's not enough desert power fucking cracked me up. That was the most entertainment I got from it. Desert power. It's like, bro, you said that, didn't you?
See, for the longest time, people are always talking about how Dune was unfilmable. Like there had been previous attempts that had turned
Really?
out bad. People are always like, "Oh, Dune is this story that's just unfilmable." And I think as what you're talking about, like I'm sure that there are people who love Dune. I thought Dune was fine. And like I'm interested to see the second one. But I think that Dune wasn't unfilmable because it was this absolute incredible idea that couldn't be captured on a film. I think it's just a misunderstanding that like some stories should be told in specific mediums. And
Yeah.
like Dune is a book because it's literature, because there's knowledge and history and these like massive spans of time and these sprawling narratives. And it's like that is not a visual story. That is a like massive amount of time that can be taken up by a book where you can be reading it, put it down, come back to it a week later and pick it up where you left off. Like it's not unfilmable because you can't capture sand on screen.
Yeah. AJ, you were saying that about Catcher in the Rye. How that
Yeah,
could
Catcher in
be
the Rye might be the like top all-time unfilmable novels, where it's just like,
yeah.
don't even like, why? Don't do
No,
it.
God, no. I mean, if you tried to make Catcher in the Rye like an actual, if you tried to adapt that, you would have the most insufferable main character that's ever been created. Like the amount of hatred towards Holden Caulfield would be unprecedented in media.
Well, also the problem is that like the book isn't really so much like you don't read the book for the plot. It's all just like him kind of his long rambling stream of consciousness. Like he'll be talking about one thing and like, oh, that reminds me of the other time. Like you can't film that, and it would be really cheesy to have it be a narrator. And
I
whoever they got
mean,
to play Holden would like Timothy Chalamet. Like who would they
oh
get?
God.
That's exactly who they would cast,
They
dude.
would get they pull Jack Gleason, who played Joffrey Baratheon, out of retirement. He'd
They,
come back to play it.
yeah, that kind of
No,
tracks actually.
it would the whole movie would just be scene by scene of him going from different spaces, going, I can't believe I have to graduate. I'm gonna go see my teacher I like. I can't believe my teacher's sick. That sucks. I'm gonna go to the city. The
God, he
city
really
sucks. I'm gonna go hire a prostitute.
I'm gonna stick up because I love Catcher in the Rye. I'm of the opinion that that book is hilarious. That Holden Caulfield's really funny, and that every time he shits on someone, it's really funny because he goes to this hoity-toity rich school full of pretentious pricks, and he's also deeply traumatized by his brother's death. So, and he's 16, so everything fucking sucks when you're
I do
16.
think I need to return to Catcher in the Rye because I've only ever read it once, and I read it when I was in high school, for school. And like, I definitely saw a bunch of myself in Holden Caulfield, but I saw all the parts that I really didn't like. So I was like, fuck Holden Caulfield.
Yeah. I have that shirt that says he just like me for real. The Catcher in the Rye cover. I love Catcher in the Rye, and it's one of my most toxic traits.
Yeah, Holden Caulfield is
Own
a
it.
hater. He's a hater to his core, and you got to respect him for it.
All right, finishing it up. Awakened from his Eraserhead fantasy, Spencer seeks out the beautiful girl from across the hall, but finds her with another man. Crushed, Spencer returns to his room. He takes a pair of scissors, cuts open the baby because he thinks they're just bandages. Then you see its guts. He stabs it, starts blah, blah. This causes the lights to flicker. As the lights burn out completely, the child's head is replaced by the planet, of course. Seen at the beginning, Spencer appears amidst a billowing cloud of racer shavings, of course. The side of the planet bursts apart, and inside, the man in the planet struggles with his levers. It's like I'm just reading this for the first time, which are now emitting sparks. Spencer is embraced warmly by the lady in the radiator as both white light and white noise build to a crescendo before the screen turns black and silent. I love describing imagery, just describing surreal imagery in the coldest way
Dude,
possible.
this is a great one.
Yeah, hearing that there's supposed to be eraser shavings that exploded, I was like, oh, that did not read.
Yeah, I
did
didn't
not
know
get
that either.
David.
Yeah, so that's the plot of Eraserhead. It's not really like a plot movie. It's more just about the vibes.
I mean, do either of you know how long the script for this movie is?
This is like 20 pages.
It is 21 pages. That was what was
That's-
greenlit. And so the AFI was like, we're going to get this 20-minute surrealist short film, right? He's like, I'm going to spend the next 8 years making
Yeah.
this.
Let's give this guy $10,000 and just let him cook.
I would honestly, if I had $10,000, I would David Lynch if he wanted it. I'd be like, yeah, sure. You could probably
I
do
mean,
something cool with it.
I would find it for him. Though supposedly it in total cost $100,000. Because I will say, apparently, not even David Lynch is above being a nepo baby. Because while he did get his initial grant from AFI and was living and working out of the AFI Greystone Mansion, uh, kept getting donations from his like childhood friend John Fisk and his wife Sissy Spacek.
Mm-hmm.
And
Carrie.
they're who kept it afloat.
Yeah, well, you want to talk real nepo babies? Fucking Eraserhead baby. That's where most of the budget went to.
That is true. I am fascinated to know how he made that baby. That baby is like gross and incredible. Like the fact that he made it himself. And I'm like, and it moves and it's got eyes, it blinks, its mouth is opening and closing. I'm like, this man did this in the 70s by himself in a stable. What the hell?
I wonder what it was like to be like a crew member on this. So
I
you're
know.
just
I was
you're just
talking like
what the fuck is this guy on about, dude?
I was talking to Addie. I was like, how do you direct actors in this? Like, I just, what do you say? Like, okay, so right now you're horny, you're crying, and you're tossing salad. Go.
I've seen there's this one clip of behind the scenes footage that was in the documentary, and it's just like a normal scene, so it's nothing that would give you a real good insight into any of the weirdness. But he was making jokes on set. He's like talking and he's standing in front of Jack Nance, who plays Eraserhead, And he's like, yeah, and so then when Jack is gonna say this, I mean, it's so amazing. It's like he's almost really here. And so it's like he's like, and people you can hear like laughing. So it's like this was a fun set.
He's a
Yeah.
really
Or
funny guy. Like
yeah,
he's a
and
cut up. He's a
also
card.
the fact that like they had two cinematographers, but the only reason that they had two is because the first one had to leave Los Angeles due to financial personal reasons. And then like the lead, Jack, he kept that hairstyle for the entire time they were shooting this movie. Because it took so long, he's like, yeah, I'll just hold on to it. So it's like if he's clearly that into being around, like it must have been a pretty solid environment.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
by all accounts, actors love David Lynch. Like he's got his repertoire. Like Laura Dern is one of his favorites. If you've ever seen him with the cow and the billboard petitioning for her Oscar campaign. But yeah, David Lynch seems like a nice guy. Seems really cool, and I love that I can defend him for being nice, and also he makes good movies, unlike a
Yeah.
certain other auteur we just
Yeah.
covered.
I know. I'm just like picturing like two like middle-aged like crew members who are just like, it's just like another job for them or whatever. And they're just like standing off to the side. They're like smoking a cigarette and they're just like, man, what's this guy? What's he doing now? Like, man, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, what was
Let's
Crafty
go back
like
to work.
on this movie?
Yeah.
They had those little chickens at the crafty table.
And every single one of them is just spewing black ooze.
Yeah, it was just that and cigarettes. That's all they had for Crafty.
Yeah. They had Haribo Eraserhead babies.
They had a damn good cup of coffee, is what they had.
It was the 70s. It was a different time. You just had to have, you would take a drag on your cigarette, you'd take a line of Coke, you'd go have sex with someone that works underneath you, and then you go make your picture.
Then you go make an art house movie. Let's get into the production head of it all
Yeah.
since we're already talking. So, going way back to the start, writer and director David Lynch had previously studied for a career as a painter and decided to become a director because he wanted to see his paintings move. Which, having seen his paintings now, I'm like, please do not make them move, keep them stationary.
Those things are my sleep paralysis demons.
Yeah.
They cycle
Dude,
through.
imagine if he became like if he decided to become an animator instead. What would happen?
If you've never watched any of his like early short films, if you don't want to sleep, watch them. Because he mixes live action with animation. He just like used to like he would basically rotoscope and draw right onto the cells.
That's
And
sick.
yeah, his very first short film was called The Grandmother, and when he showed it to like like he got this grant to make a short film and he makes The Grandmother, and when he shows it to the person who was like coming to see it for AFI, they watched it. He said he lost his mind, but when he came back down, he was like, you should come and go to AFI.
I'm just imagining an alternate universe David Lynch that goes to Cal Arts and gets like scooped up by Disney for a while.
Oh
And
my
he's like,
God.
I'm making the Fox and the Hound.
Yeah, except the hound at one point splits its chest open and insects crawl out, and then you watch the hound decay in real time.
And then they
Dude,
cut off the fox's
I
ear.
would fucking that would be actually really cool. It'd be like watching a David Lynch movie with like Disney animation,
Yeah.
but it's like his mind behind it. That would be pretty fucking dope.
What if for all these like live action remakes, instead of just reproducing them, they got like auteurs like David Lynch? David Lynch's The Little Mermaid.
Oh my God, David Lynch's Aladdin would have been something else.
Sorry,
All right,
David.
so in 1970, at the age of 24, which is how old I am, David Lynch accepted a scholarship at the AFI Center for Advanced Film Studies. I always like when they say he accepted a scholarship and they never really specify how did he get those connections to just be in the AFI. Like you
Yeah.
read those stories, it's like, well, Steven Spielberg didn't know what to do, so he went to USC. It's like, how do you can't just go there. Like those are expensive schools.
Did he ever get into USC?
No, he went to some like random ass college and then dropped out. He didn't get accepted into USC.
Yeah.
So he went to the AFI Center for Advanced Film Studies, but he disliked the course and considered dropping out. But after being offered the chance to produce a script of his own devising, he changed his mind, which is where Eraserhead started. Lynch had initially begun work on a script titled Garden Back, based on his painting of a hunched figure with vegetation growing from its back. He went from garden on the back to eraser on the head, so it's kind of an upward momentum, I guess.
I will say that garden back would have at least been like greener. It would have been weird because we would have gotten like plants growing through people, absolutely. But it would have had less of the drab, like industrial, vibe.
Hmm.
I want to watch David Lynch direct a Batman movie.
Oof. Oof.
That'd be cool.
That would be twisted.
That'd be
Dude.
sick.
Like it's like in Joker's mind or something.
David Lynch's Joker.
There's actually this
That would be
incredible.
cool, dude. That would honestly be cool.
And here's the thing: we could absolutely pitch this because there's a great comic book called Arkham Asylum. This was even before the video game came out, and it's from Joker's perspective.
That one's
And
fucking
it's
creepy.
Joker going through the asylum, and it's some of the creepiest art style that DC's ever put out.
Dude, that's fucking cool. I did not know that existed.
Dude,
No,
look it up.
well
It's
worth the read.
so scary, the artwork in it. It's like those old scary stories to tell in the dark.
Yeah.
It's like that vibe for
That's
the
cool,
art.
dude. Let's get David Lynch on this shit ASAP.
Let's get David Lynch on the podcast.
Look, James Gunn has just got to call up David Lynch and be like, David, I know you've been jonesing to get into the superhero game.
It's like, I know you haven't directed a movie in 20 years. How about Booster Gold?
So Starro is a fish from the star.
Imagine David Lynch like having to learn all the lore. Have you guys heard when George Lucas tried to get him to direct a Star Wars movie?
No.
I heard that happened, but no, I did not.
Oh, him telling the story is so fucking funny. I might splice in a clip during this, but basically he's like, so George pulled me aside and he took me to this restaurant that only served salad. And then he started talking about these things called Wookiees, and I just had the worst migraine. Imagine David Lynch's Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, he's just like George Lucas is just rambling on about his fucking idea.
This is
David Lynch is like-
cloud of Bespin, and
It's like, what are you talking about, man? Shut up.
I know, but it's also like if
Even
David
me.
Lynch
Yeah.
described any of his movies, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, well, it's just funny that someone like David Lynch, even he gets a headache from getting pitched Star Wars. Like, he's like, those ideas are too zany, dude. I'm the creator of Eraserhead.
God, we're pitching all these projects to David Lynch. I hope he hears this episode.
I mean, he's watching the pod, so
Yeah, well, I send him every episode. He hasn't written me back, but
I think my favorite thing though about David Lynch is that he's very aware of like his placement in the rankings of pop culture icons. Because there's this like quote where he was talking about Steven Spielberg, and he was like, so because he was when he was getting a part of the Fablemans, and he was like, because the difference between me and Steven is that Steven makes movies and millions of people love them, and I make movies and thousands of people love them. It's like, he's definitely not being like, I don't understand why I'm not more mainstream. He's like, no, I'm exactly where I want to be.
That's cool.
he's also kind of leaned into his meme ability. Like his weather reports are definitely him just being like, I know film Twitter will love this.
Yep,
Do you think David Lynch has a letterbox?
probably. He knows his audience.
And
Yeah,
it's probably under
definitely.
like a real weird name.
He's got like his watch list. I can't wait for Barbie.
Dude,
Oh,
Letterboxd
David Lynch
really...
is he's gonna get like front row seats to Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He'll
Dude,
bring like
Letterboxd is
4
really...
stuffed animals with him or something to fill out the row.
Eraserhead babies. His homies, they all have sunglasses on. They're just chilling in the front row. He's smoking a cig, drinking his coffee. I'd hang with him.
I'm going to do
I
some
think-
more production. So the script would have resulted in a roughly 45-minute long film, which the AFI felt was too long for such a figurative, non-linear script. Oh boy. In its place, Lynch presented Eraserhead, which he had developed based on a daydream of a man's head being taken to a pencil factory, blah, blah, blah. Several board members at the AFI were still opposed to producing such a surrealist work because they're fucking nerds, but they acquiesced when Dean Frank Daniel threatened to resign if it were to be vetoed. So he got the money to make his movie.
Does that Dean love his job so much, or did he like know David Lynch?
Yeah, I'm just imagining. I can't imagine the dean of my college doing that for any student ever.
Yeah,
Especially in
no.
like the film business. Imagine sticking your neck out for a 24-year-old weirdo who wants to make
Yeah.
his paintings move.
No, yeah. Like especially to be like he already thought about dropping out and they had to pitch him on being like, "Well, if we let you just do whatever you want, will you stay?" So it's like they really really wanted him there, which hey, in hindsight, great. That's good education, good educators. They let, an auteur. But it's like what a bet. What a
I know,
like
right?
1 in a million call.
I can't say that I would have had the vision to to bet on that guy. I'm gonna be real.
Probably wouldn't. I'll be
But
real though.
I
Like I
Vision
don't
for that.
know AFI for sure, but I'm just imagining any film school. Probably like 95% of the movies people make are coming of age stories about their high school experience,
Yep.
and then David Lynch comes in like, "What if there was a guy who lived in a planet?" And they're like, "Oh wow, it's something."
it's it's creative at least.
What if
Yeah.
I told you about a story about a guy named David Lynch and he's terrified of being a father? David, what if I told you about a story about a guy named Spencer who's terrified of being a father?
Yeah.
I guess this is his kind of like coming of age movie. This is David Lynch making his own Lady Bird.
And see,
This is
that's
his lady.
why I will stand by my theory that the sperminoid is actually a representation of his spirit. Because not only did his spirit come out of his body when he learned that he was going to become a father and it drowned in that pool, but
Drowned it out, pussy.
it drowned it out. But it also then he gets the little tiny little worm that he puts in his cabinet off the side, and he like checks in on it every once in a while. Like he'll like there's a scene where he's like interacting with it's the baby when he's sick. And he goes, "Oh, you really are sick."
And then it like
And then he
has
goes
the
in
plague.
and he checks on the box and he's like looking at it. It feels to me when I look at it through that lens, that's me going like, oh, he's dealing with his new relationship, his new existence as a father, what it's going to take for him to continue to care for this child, as well as trying to foster this new identity, which is fledgling and growing.
Yeah, not only that, but when you have kids, you totally fucking lose your life. Like new parents have bags under their eyes because they're up all fucking night dealing with their children. They have no time for existential problems or anything. They have to give up everything to take care of this child. So I guess I wasn't so sure at first about when you said that, but now I've thought about it a little more. That makes some sense. Like you know he has to kind of reform himself under this new label. This new identity as a father.
And what's nice is that it's not all bad. I mean, there's a lot of like, people are screaming and crying, but like it's the very first scene that he comes home after they now have and now that they have the Eraserhead baby, that he smiles. He comes in through the door and he sees Mary and the baby, and he has the tiniest little like, oh, that's so cute. And then he like drops back into his like very standard baseline. Let me walk around the world looking very serious and forlorn. And later on, when he like lays down on the bed, he looks over again, and he once again has a little like just tiny little smile. It's this like little moment of joy that shows like yes, they're tired. Yes, there's a lot of tension, but still this existence of this child does bring him happiness.
So I guess my question regarding your like analysis of that is like so what makes you so sure that it's specifically, I'm not saying it's not, I'm just genuinely wondering like what makes you so sure that it's um him like regrowing his soul and not simply like his soul just like extending itself, he's like he puts part of his soul into the child, and that's just like an extension of himself in a way.
The boy's
Well,
soul.
I think it's because it's like he does have to give part of himself to allow this child to exist, like any
Yeah,
parent does. But that then doesn't mean that the parent, has died. It's not like the parent is now only existing for the child. It's like, yes, they have created this child. They now have to care and guide them, but now they also have to continue living, especially
yeah,
after this child eventually grows up and leaves. It's like, okay, you have changed. You won't go back to the person you were before, but that doesn't mean that you have to stop existing.
There is kind of a death, huh? Isn't there? There's like a death of your old.
Well, yeah, you
Yeah,
can also read the
that would ruin it,
ending
actually.
as
Yeah.
him dying. I know there's been some interpretation that the ending is supposed to be like him committing suicide or something like that because he meets up with the lady in the radiator and then they go in this like all white background. She's constantly singing, "In heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so." That's not the song, but I can't remember the melody of the other one. So yeah, it's Death Rebirth. Would you be shocked to find out that he was influenced by Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis?
I would not be
Really? The
shocked at
bug
all.
one? Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, what a
Yeah, the bug
shocker.
meme one. Yeah, so he was influenced by that, but he said that the film really came together when he opened up a Bible, read one verse from it, and shut it. In retrospect, Lynch could not remember if the verse was from the Old Testament or the New Testament.
Dude, have you guys read Franz Kafka? Because I haven't read him before, but I've read a bunch of his quotes that I just thought were super profound, and I'd really like to get into it.
I
I
have
have
not.
not read Franz Kafka, but my brother has a degree in philosophy, and Franz Kafka is his, if not favorite, one of his favorite authors. And so I've heard a lot of philosophy from Franz Kafka through my brother.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, he's got some really good quotes. There's a quote that was attributed to some people say it's attributed to him, but some people say it's like attributed to someone else. Nobody really knows, but the quote, this is like one of my favorite things I've ever heard, and it was I was something along the lines of like I was quite embarrassed when I realized that life was a costume party and I showed up with my real face.
Hmm.
I love that.
You can't see it, but I just put my bangs in front of my eyes.
What do you mean it's a costume party?
You guys are all wearing masks, but this is me.
Standing
Or
off.
here's a good one. Here's a good one. Here's a good one. This one's depressing, but
Ooh.
he said I could have built the pyramids of or like at the pyramids of Giza with the amount of effort it takes me to cling on to meaning and life.
Shut the fuck up.
You don't like that?
Fuck off, Franz.
How much
I
I
fuck with
try
that, dude. I think
every
that's good.
day. I struggle. I wake up and I stand in the darkness, smoking my cigarettes. None of them know that I showed up to this costume party with my real
All right, for
face.
sure. I don't know. I thought it was cool.
No, that it does. I'm a hater. I'm holding Caulfield.
No, it's all good.
That gives me kind of like sorry I'm late, I didn't want to come vibes.
Yeah.
No, Franz. That's the thing. He's so straightforward. Like he likes to write flowery language, but he also loves to just cut straight through to the heart of something. Be like, this is exactly what I think.
Yeah.
The script is also thought to have been inspired by Lynch's fear of fatherhood. I don't know. Did you guys pick up on that? Did we pick up on that? Did we talk about that at all?
Are we talking about how he wrote a movie about a printer in a industrial city recently married that had a child with disabilities when he himself was a printer in an industrial city recently married with a child with disabilities?
Wait,
What?
his child had disabilities?
Yeah,
He was born with
she
club
had
feet.
severely clubbed feet, is how it's described.
Really? Oh,
Mhm.
okay. I did
It
not
required
know that.
extensive corrective surgery.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I wonder if the child represents his like fear of having, like, because I feel like if you have a wife who's pregnant and you're gonna have a child, like I would definitely be like afraid, like, what if, oh shit, what if this gets
What if they
fucked?
come out the Eraserhead baby?
So
Yeah, I don't know.
there
It could
is
be. Yeah.
this absolutely incredible story where he's been living in Philadelphia and he's met his girlfriend. Oh, what was his first? His daughter was Jennifer. I think Peggy. Let me double check that before
He
I say the
would be
wrong
married to
name
someone fucking named
10,000 times.
Peggy.
Yeah,
David
he
Lynch
would.
would.
Yeah, he would.
This
Yep,
is my wife,
Peggy.
Mary Sue.
Her
Like, that would be.
his first wife Peggy. They get married. Sorry, they meet each other. They're dating. She moves in. Then his dad is like, "Hey, I'm gonna come up and visit you." And because they were in the 60s at this point, they're very traditional. So it's like, oh, Peggy has to move out just for the visit. So his dad comes up, he's showing around the house. He's like, yeah, dad, I'm living on my own. And then he's like, oh, because growing up, his dad always had projects. That was this big thing that he kind of talked about as an influence. Is like, my father always had projects going on. He's always stimulating his mind. And so that's why he became a painter. He kind of always had a project going on. So he's like, oh, this will interest my dad. Let me show him something. So he takes his dad down into the basement. And in the basement of the house that he was living in, it is this like dirt floor basement that's got cobwebs and just old, it's brick and wood. And he has set up what he literally describes as experiments that include watching fruit decay and dead birds and how they decay and having wrapped mice in plastic and like dissected bugs because he's really fascinated by all of this. And he's like, my dad will surely think all of this is super cool. So he shows his dad and he's like, awesome, let's go upstairs so you can leave. And as he's going up the stairs, he's like, yeah, I was smiling and happy. And I turned around and on my father's face, I saw a terrified expression that he had been hiding from me. And then on the ride to the train station in silence, his dad breaks the silence by going, Dave? Yeah? I don't think you should ever have children. And then he dropped his dad off and his dad went home. And then Peggy moved back in. And lo and behold, Peggy was already pregnant.
Oh my God.
So that is the vibe he basically started fatherhood with, was his dad very recently telling him that he should never have children because he's like, Dave, you might be fucked up. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to be a dad soon.
I love the idea of him being afraid to show his dad that he lives with a woman, but not being like, hey, you want to come see my bugs?
Also, the direct quote was, he did not understand my experiments.
Honestly, I've lived in houses that are kind of that vibe. Just like rotting fruit and bugs and shit.
Yeah, but never
Bats.
intentionally.
Bats.
Like, yeah, I might be doing some David Lynch shit in my fridge by accident. But like, I didn't set it up and I don't showcase it when people come over.
You didn't set up like a rig. Like,
Honestly, Noah, our house on Prentice Street was very Lynchian.
it was very Lynchian. Yeah, we had bats flying around in the moonlight.
Ooh.
We had broken glass on the floor.
Dude, it's our Philadelphia story.
The Philadelphia Story.
Not that one.
We should cover that on the pod. I love that movie.
Shit, it's a good one. Yeah, we post-adolescence.
The year we lived in
College times.
squalor.
Yeah.
You're becoming men.
I'm honestly amazed none of the other boys in that house or us gave birth to an Eraserhead baby that year. Like, that would have been the vibe.
Well, I mean, we haven't given birth yet. I mean, we could be infected with the vibe of that house still.
Yeah, true.
You could be
Pass it on.
gestating.
There's an Eraserhead baby.
We shouldn't have children, dude.
You should never have. I love the use
That's
of
such
never.
a
It's not like
fucked
don't
up
have
thing
kids.
to say.
It was you should never have children.
This guy shouldn't have. I wonder if he was like afraid that David Lynch's children would be like serial killers or something.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's-
David Lynch.
I'm saving the world by telling my son this.
What's interesting is it's like someone like David Lynch, you would think would have like contentious family dynamics. You'd think that maybe this came from like a weird home. But like I was talking about earlier, he has nothing but good things to say about both of his parents. And like he talks about his dad, like anytime he knew that he could always go to his dad with a problem because he knew that his dad would help him, would also require him to like put in the work to solve it. But it was
Yep.
never like, oh, do it yourself, fuck off. It was like, okay, I will do half as long as you do half. And he talked about his mom and like she was this very warm and kind woman who was extremely against racism, especially, I mean, for the 60s and 50s, anything's going to be a plus. But like he's talked about how she was like, she wasn't this very emotionally intimate woman, but she was very kind. And it's like, and so, he has these like pretty great parental relationships, but he himself kind of developed this very interesting relationship with fatherhood.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And it's watching the movie. It's funny because it's like most times, anytime there's like a film theory, I'm like, I feel like you're just writing fan fiction. Like anytime someone's like, my theory for The Shining is that actually the ghosts unlocked the fridge and Jack's been a
Yeah.
ghost the whole time, whatever. But like with this movie, I genuinely feel like theories are actual ways to cut through to whatever weirdness is happening underneath. Because it's like the two other fathers or at least other father figures that I think of in Eraserhead are Bill, Mary's dad, he's a plumber, he's a working man, and he's kind, he helps out with the cooking, he's preparing the chicken and all that, but he still kind of dismisses his wife's hysteria, but he's just pretty straightforward dad.
The old
And
ball and
then
chain.
exactly, he's just a bit of a stereotypical father. And if I'm very reaching, I would say that the man in the planet pulling the levers is like spiritually Eraserhead's dad. I feel like if I were to look at this story very literally, I would think that the woman in the radiator is his mom, and that the man pulling the levers is his dad. Because it
Could be.
feels like the dad, he pulls the levers, it activates, the process, the creation of life. And then at the end, especially when he goes to see his mom or the woman in the radiator, it's kind of like this, all right, my child has now moved beyond me as a parent. I'm now returning to my parent. It's a bit of a half-baked idea, but that's how I'm reading it.
No, I'm into it, man.
It's very open to interpretation. Like I
Yeah.
don't. This is one of those where there's going to be very few, like actual, like genuine analysis that I think will be off base. Like I kind of took the man in the planet. I'm getting confused, but the man in the planet I kind of took as like his internal desires or conscious, like the one pulling the levers, literally making the decisions, being like, all right, you're gonna come.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the man in the planet is diseased. He's got boils and
Mm-hmm.
shit going on. They're very visually similar to when the Eraserhead baby is sick.
Yeah. It's like his decision making is flawed and sick in itself if you view it the way I did.
Yeah. And it kind of is like if you have an unhealthy foundation, it will lead to unhealthy choices that then if you ever, procreate, it will perpetuate unhealthiness in the next generation.
So it's really about trauma.
So it's really about generational trauma here. We're talking about family. We're talking about parents passing on their troubles to their children.
That's like what every horror movie nowadays is about. So
Yeah.
Lynch is ahead of his time.
With millennials very much dominating the writer's space of new media, we're getting a lot of generational trauma, a lot of parents fucked us up trauma, and horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't seen this in a minute, but the setting was very industrial, right? Like
Yeah.
it was super. What do you think he's like? Why do you think he made that choice? It almost seems like because there's this film I saw called Red Desert where the whole thing is like the industrial environment's kind of like making everyone sick and like spiritually sick and physically sick and all that. And I was wondering if that had anything to do with this film where it was like this somewhat like anti-capitalist or anti-industrialist thing. He's like,
I could easily see that,
Yeah.
especially coming from the Midwest, growing up in these very green, especially for thinking of like how they would have looked in the 50s and 60s, between Idaho, Montana, and Washington. Like that's going to be lush. You're going to have clean air. You're going to, especially as a kid running around, like you're just going to be, living the high life to then be brought into a city of any level, especially something like Philadelphia that has up to that point like had a large industrial industry that then was able to collapse and fall into decay, is like to come into that environment would absolutely feel like, oh, this place is sick. This,
Yeah,
I
the
know what
whole
it's
thing
like
is
to
sick.
live.
The people,
Exactly.
the place is everything about it is sick. It's just a sick. Oh, yeah. Okay, that all makes sense. It's just a sickness. The
Yeah.
whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said
And
that too, didn't he?
exactly. It's like, so
Yeah.
to know what it's like to live in green and lush, and then to know what it's like to live in like dark and cloudy and stormy, where the air itself smells. Ugh.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the polar opposite of how he paints the world in like Blue Velvet, where it's very Americana, picturesque, bright blue skies, picket fences, everyone smiling, and then there's that awful underbelly. Whereas this, everything is just front and center. He's stepping in mud. Everything looks like shit. His apartment's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Underneath that
So.
that beautiful mowed green grass is just a shit ton of grimy bugs wrestling with each other.
Oh, David.
And it's interesting because every set that's in the movie was built inside the stables at the Greystone Mansion.
That's cool.
Because they basically, like, AFI was like, okay, go live in the stables if you want to. I'm sure he had an actual dorm, but he chose to live in there. And they built every set inside of it over time. He did a lot of the work himself. Like, I'm sure that he got some other people, carpenters and whatnot, to come in and help. But like, there's photos and videos of him laying out tiles and painting signs, everything by hand, so much of it alone. And he's talked about how, like, while he was living there, because of course they're filming over years, he would like spend some nights just going and like sitting in some of the sets. And he said that he would just imagine the world around the set. He's like, I would imagine myself in the world of the movie. And he said that he could hear the rain sometimes, and he could smell the smoke, and he just knew of it as this industrial factory that was dark and grimy. And he said that there was this quote that he had. It was the greatest, happiest experience in cinema that he's ever had. And he said that in his like 70s, thinking back to
Wow.
it.
What an artist. What a
Yeah.
dedicated
My
artist.
life a movie for real.
Thinking
Dude,
about him
he's
in the basement of a stable that he had built a grimy ass like hotel lobby in. And he's just sitting in a chair being like, I made this.
I
This
know
is
he's talking about that with just the most rose tinted glasses, and he talks about meeting the creator and director of Star Wars like it was the worst experience of his life.
yeah.
He's got this story where he walked out of seeing Bob Dylan. Like, he saw Bob Dylan playing a show, and apparently he like showed up to it and then like started just like making jokes. And like, none of them are good. He's like telling the story, and I'm like, do you know that these are not funny now? But he was like saying to like the girl that he was next to, he'd like raise his thumb and be like, look how small he is. Look at his pants. They're the size of my thumb. And
Okay,
like
that's a
all of
good
his
bit.
and his friends are like, hey dude, this is Bob Dylan. Could you maybe
Yeah.
not? And he just like he got up and left partway through the show. And he said his like at the time roommate followed him out and was like, dude, nobody walks out on Dylan. And he goes, well, I do. And he goes, and that was the end of us being roommates.
That's gonna be
Yeah,
me at the Talks Hard
that's
show.
kind of I think I'd definitely be a little annoyed with him over that one. It's like, who
I'd
do
be
you
like,
think you are, dude?
okay.
Yo, shut up. Get back to your weird sperm baby.
All right,
Shit.
so that's not everything for production, but that's as much as I want to get into. There's so much you can do. Watch a fucking documentary. I want to talk about some trivia because it's funny you should mention The Shining. Stanley Kubrick made the cast of The Shining watch Eraserhead, among other films, to get in the mood for filming the horror picture. Kubrick also told Lynch that Eraserhead was one of his favorite movies.
That is some high praise.
Yeah. I feel like there's a bunch of just random ass movies that Kubrick will say are his favorites. Like, I know he called Bob Fosse and told him that All That Jazz was one of his favorite movies. Also, apparently, Steve Martin's The Jerk is one of his favorite movies. So, the man's
Okay.
he's got taste.
He loves La Notte. That's one of my faves.
He's got range.
Some more trivia ahead. When production on the film took longer than expected, David Lynch had to sleep in the same room used as Henry's bedroom for over a year.
Okay.
I don't really understand why he had to do that.
Yeah, I'm like, did he give up because he was living in those stables.
Mm-hmm.
So did he change his bedroom into another set? Like,
I'm imagining him having a girl over and she's like, "Bitch, you live like this?"
See, he might not have had a girl over, but he definitely got divorced during the process.
Yeah.
Mm. Just be like, yeah, I live like this. It's great. This is the happiest days of my life.
Do you, honestly, if I was his wife and my husband made Eraserhead, I don't know how I would feel about that. My
Imagine
marriage
being
after
his
that.
kid,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
daughter, and it's like, this is how I see you. And it's the Eraserhead baby.
You're my little radioactive
Which
sperm.
also,
How
another
was
piece
that?
of trivia, all of the noises made by the Eraserhead baby were provided by David Lynch's daughter, Jennifer.
Yeah, real subtle there, David.
Yeah, you want to talk about generational trauma? Like, my dad sees me as the Eraserhead baby.
What a fun fact. What a two truths and a lie, though.
I know.
Like, yeah, I've gone skiing in the Alps. I'm allergic to shellfish, and I am the Eraserhead baby.
The Eraserhead baby. I wonder what he's up to now. He should get more work. I haven't seen him in this much stuff anymore.
Actually, I did see him on Where Are They Now?
Oh, really?
Eraserhead Baby has a couple of properties. He sells them on Airbnb. So he's doing all right for himself.
That's good. Yeah, I heard he took a break from acting for a little bit, kind of burned out in the 90s when the
He
roles
did
dried up.
when his chest did expand into an overwhelming like foam mountain. He did want to step away from public life.
Well, he got some good work on ER as like the cadavers. The only problem is that they could never show his head because he's the Eraserhead baby. They immediately everyone at home be like, "Hey, it's the Eraserhead baby."
Yeah, he's a hand model actually.
Mm-hmm. He's a guts model. All right, let's move on. More trivia ahead. The film star Jack Nance never knew nor cared exactly what Eraserhead meant. In an interview with the Twin Peaks fanzine wrapped in plastic, Nance said, "You guys get way too deep over this business. I don't take it all that seriously. It's only a movie."
I think that is the exact mentality he needed to have to make this movie.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's the excuse that Marvel fans use. It's like, it's a movie. It's supposed to be fun, but he's using that about Eraserhead. Like, just shut your brain off and watch it.
I mean, dude,
Just
it's
sit
like
back and
how
relax.
else you gonna get through it? You know what I mean? That's like what I'm talking about with the dudes who are just like, all right, smoke a cig and get back to it, man. Like, you gotta fucking rough your way through that shit somehow.
Yeah, you really got to give yourself to Eraserhead. Of all of David Lynch's movies, it's definitely, and I haven't seen all of them, but of the ones I've seen, this is the least accessible. Like, I think if I showed my mom this, she might like die. She would just have a heart attack.
Yeah,
Her brain would explode. But yeah, you kind of just have to be like, all right, this is the world. Let's vibe. It's kind of fun. It's funny. It's weird looking. It's not. I was never bored. Like it's very slow, very unwaveringly slow. But
yeah.
I just enjoyed being in this weird, gross world.
Well, I mean, to all of our thousands, I mean, millions of listeners, I will say that if you want to watch this movie, you have to go into it with the mentality of, all right, this is gonna be fucking weird. Let's do this, and you're
You
gonna
also
have a
have to be
great
like,
time.
you have to remember that like a 25-year-old made this. A 25-year-old who had never made a full movie before
Yeah,
made
this is
this.
not. Yeah, this is not some like creepy old dude. This is like a 25-year-old dude who's like
A creepy
in his
25-year
prime.
old dude.
Like I
Yeah,
hate to say this because it's not even something that he had control over, but there are like camera move mistakes in the movie. Like there's a couple of moments when the camera's on a slider and we're like slowly moving over and you fully like the subject starts to like leave center of frame and then the camera like picks back up and then like corrects too far and then they cut like it literally it's like you can tell that they didn't do it enough or they got as close as they could to the move they wanted to do.
yeah,
Like these were students. They were going to AFI.
I know, I love that shit though. It gives it its charm. It's
Exactly.
like David Lynch reminds me so much of John Waters, not just because they have like very
Yes.
similar energies, but just the kind of like DIY. We're making movies about weird, gross people that are kind of off-putting, but also very darkly funny. And John Waters
Hey,
was actually one of the original people to champion Eraserhead, and he was like, "You need to show this at midnight screenings because that's how John Waters got famous. Was the freaks would come out at midnight and watch Pink Flamingos, which I'm very tempted to put on the slate for movies to cover."
A John Waters David Lynch crossover, that would be something very fucked up and very entertaining.
Hmm.
Put John Waters on the list, man. I've never seen a John Waters movie.
Pink Flamingos is fucking gross. It literally ends with
Perfect.
Divine eating shit, like actual dog shit.
Dope.
I know it's fun. It's weird. It's very upsetting. I watched it with Addie and their mom actually.
A bold
That
choice.
tracks.
It was there's a part of the movie where a dude just like makes his asshole pucker open and closed.
Cool. Wait, do you see the asshole?
Yeah, you see the asshole.
Oh yeah, John
Sick.
Waters. John Waters is like the reason there is an NC-17 rating, essentially. Like that
Mhm.
man loves to fully push boundaries.
I'm here for it, dude.
He's the
I'm gonna watch
original
that tonight.
edgelord. His whole thing was that he made movies that would shock liberals because no conservatives saw his movie. So he's like, well, I can't put something that's going to shock them. I got to shock my crowd. Which that movie, even still, I'm like, God, Jesus, that's a lot to put in there.
What's your rating for that one out of 5?
I don't even think I could rate it. Like, it's
Those movies exist on a different scale.
it's like technically perfect at everything it set out to do, but also I'm just like, oh, I don't like. There's so much of it I just don't like looking at. There's
Yeah.
a couple of unstimulated sex scenes that are just so upsetting. There's the one point they cut off a chicken's head and then they like fuck it. It's a weird movie. It's also pretty funny. There's a lot of really funny bits, but we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about a
Well,
normal movie for cool people.
So sorry, real quick. Isn't this movie supposed to be like one of the big pieces of like queer cinema or something?
Yeah, it is because
Yeah.
it stars
Or-
Divine, the famous drag queen Divine, who was like John Waters' muse. And the whole thing is just that Divine is in a competition with another family to see who can be the most disgusting person. Filth is my life.
It is
That's
a great
fucking
premise.
awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll put it on the schedule. I have to think of a good guest we could get for that, but
So-
That is actually a weirdly perfect like situation to compare the two like lenses, like a perfect lens to view the two directors through. Like give John Waters and David Lynch a severed head. What do you do with it? John Waters, I fuck it. David Lynch, I take it and turn it into erasers.
exactly. They're two peas in a pod, those two, because they also haven't made a movie in like 20 years. Because I don't know if they could get one made with a modern cancel culture. And
Couldn't make
wokeness.
Eraserhead today.
Like, why would you though?
Yeah, because audiences would be like, this is kind of fucked.
Yeah. Another piece of trivia: David Lynch refuses to say anything about Eraserhead because he wants to let viewers decide for themselves what they think it means. There's a great interview where he goes, believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film. And the interviewer is like, elaborate on that. And David Lynch just goes, no.
Like, not to actually you right now, but it's so much better with the 2 additional words because he goes, no, I won't.
I love the.
I love that.
No, have you seen the video where he's talking with Harry Dean Stanton and I can't remember which one said it, but he's like, "How would you describe yourself?" And Harry Dean Stanton's like, "As nothing. There is no self." And then they both just start laughing.
No, that sounds fucking great.
It's so funny. There's no
Two
dialogue for the
cosmic
first
entities
10 and a half
walk the
minutes.
bar. Oh, that's right. It's fully fucking silent. Well, it's not
Nor
silent.
the last nor the last 20 to 30. So there's a full 40 minutes of this like 80-minute movie that just has no dialogue.
It's just gross noises.
Which we compare that to our last week's episode on Solaris, which again I did not watch, so I cannot comment, but it stinks.
It stinks.
I mean, it makes sense how you get a 21-page script into an 88-minute film.
Yeah, just don't write anything else.
Yeah, literally, the scene description is like moon floats in space, head jizzes out of mouth, descends.
I know, like imagine being these actors getting that script and then being like, "Yeah, sure, David, I'll be in this." Because we've brought him up several times. We have a friend who writes weird art house crap like that, and it's like this sounds like nonsense.
Yeah, it's like, how do you communicate that vision? Again, okay, so again, I'm going back back to what I said earlier, real quick, because I never turned it off when he told me to. But Night of the Hunter, this has got to be some of the most beautiful black and white cinematography I've ever found.
It's gorgeous. It's
I
one of the
can't
best
wait to
looking
watch
movies
it.
of all
Sorry,
time.
I keep going back to it, but it's so I'm like getting distracted because of how beautiful it is.
Oh, it's awesome. It looks so good. I got the Criterion Blu-ray. I forgot to even do my starting question. Danny, you're a film boy. What do you think of the Criterion collection?
The Criterion Collection is great. I think I think of it kind of like where, randomly some movies will get accepted into like the Library of Congress and people will be
Yeah.
like, this is important, right? So I feel like that with the Criterion Collection where it's just like a group of some people that are like, these are the best movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically just whatever they can get the rights to, but
No.
don't tell
But I mean, I
anybody
will say that like you go to the Criterion Collection and there's very few bad ones.
Yeah, they got a lot of bangers, which we will
Sure.
be covering. That's why we started this podcast.
I feel like the Criterion Collection is like expanded my mind. Jesus, dude, get a fucking muffler.
I could hear that.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know, it's changed. Like watching some of these like high concept films has really kind of changed the way I like take in art and like interpret the world, honestly. And that's cool. I feel like that's like how a great film should be. It should change the way you like look at stuff.
You're telling me that when films challenge your perception, it helps you grow as a viewer?
Yeah.
Sounds fake.
I love that, man. That's
definitely.
Criterion Collection.
No, I love like there are some movies that are just great entertainment that I'm like, yeah, I throw this on because I want to just like kind of turn my brain off for a little bit, enjoy myself, have a good time. And then stuff like Eraserhead, these are movies that I'm like, oh, this is someone had a vision. Like there are some movies that are made by committee, some movies that are made by studio, and then this is like, no, this was one person had a vision and they fully birthed that and put it on celluloid.
It's not a product to him.
Yes.
Like it's a he's expressing something. He's trying to communicate an idea, you know.
It's a living sculpture. And it's I love the way that David Lynch describes him creating the idea of movie making was he was in his studio in I can't remember what city it was, but he was in his like painting studio and he was working on this like 4x4 painting, and he said while sitting there he heard wind coming out of the painting. Then he saw the green start like moving around, and he had the thought. He was like, a painting that moves with sound. I think I'm onto something here.
I mean,
And what if there were 24 of them a second? You guys want to hear some 1-star reviews?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so this first one comes from a user called Anto. They have a swan in their title. They say, we as a society need to raise money and get David Lynch to see a fucking therapist.
Fuck you.
I love that criticism.
This is his therapy.
Yeah, that's like what Spielberg said when he was making Fablemans. He's like, I've never been to therapy. Movies are my therapy.
I'm
like, almost like art.
You might want to try therapy.
Yeah, he's.
But I will say, I'm like, David Lynch. I don't know if David Lynch, if therapy would help David. One, I don't think he's actually got stuff going on in his head that he needs therapy. I think people that don't understand what it means to have a slightly different view of the world would look at him and be like, there's something clearly wrong with him. Where I'm like, no, he's just different. But like, I think the way that he operates and his mind works, literally sitting him down in a room with the therapist to talk it out, I don't think that would actually like solve any of his problems.
He'd fuck up the therapist.
Yeah. Not only that, but I feel like, and this just could be like the like toxic values that society have placed on us as men, but I feel like for an artist, like the more you talk about your problems instead of just like infusing them into your work, like the less powerful your work becomes. I don't know if that's true or not.
I mean, that varies on the artist. There's definitely times where it's like, dude, like, why? This is like Sam Levinson. Like, bro, you don't have to put all of your trauma on screen.
No, like, but like with taste, you know, like
Yeah, I mean, when good
not like
artists do
outright
it.
saying something or outright showing like a particular thing, but turning it into something else entirely.
No, I mean, like the greatest art is always the most personal art, and it always feels the more personal when you're putting your personal experiences, your firsthand existence onto the work. And I'm like, if you were to take those experiences, those traumas, and work through them, I still think there is a world in which you can get your head around it and
Yeah,
then apply it to work. But I will say that there is a far more raw and genuine experience when you haven't processed it and you're throwing it at the wall like paint and seeing what it splatters into.
exactly. I think the like turmoil in a sense can give you the urge to do it versus like where you're not mechanically isn't the right word, but you're mechanically like going through what happened in your head and it's less primal, less
It's the difference
instinctual.
between doing like an improv scene versus sitting down and writing out a scene. Of being
Yeah.
like, okay, what's in the moment? What's in the moment? What's the first thing coming to my mind? Versus going, all right, I'm going to try to think of this structure. I'm going to try to put all the pieces in place where they need to be. Spending the time to think about something can sometimes sterilize it.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. I was just thinking of like an improv show where they're like, "We're taking suggestions," and someone yells out generational trauma.
They're like, what do you think we're all doing here? Yes, and
It's like, I
I, I
was never
think
good
I
enough,
think
mom.
I think generational trauma that could actually be a really good improv prompt. I think you could do some really funny shit with that. I'm not gonna lie.
I should go to
yeah,
some shows to just yell out prompts like that.
You can do a lot with that.
it's a powerful weapon.
This next review comes from Abby with 3 exclamation points. We say the names of the users so that our listeners can go cyberbully them. And
Absolutely, and that is ABB exclamation point IE, right?
there's actually, so it's capital A B B E Y exclamation point exclamation point exclamation point. Looks like they live in. You know,
Or we're doxing her.
Real
Listen,
quick.
Abby, there are consequences for the things you say.
They said, I did not like off putting and uncomfortable weird vibes, and then in parentheses, babies are gross.
I mean, baby's gross. Can't
I mean,
can't falter there.
she's like right about everything she said, I guess.
I know I
Yeah.
can't disagree with any of her reasons for not liking it. They're just reasons. Like, I would do the same review, but I would take out not. It would just say, I did like off putting and uncomfortable weird vibes. Babies are gross.
Babies are
Yes.
gross.
It's
Yeah.
it's funny because when it comes to a movie review, my first instinct is like, well, you're coming at it from a very subjective, opinionated standpoint. You should probably approach this with a more like critical mind. And then I go, no, it's her experience with the movie was that she had a bad time. So for her,
I,
it's a
You know,
bad movie.
I will
it's
fault
not
no
for
one for
everyone.
having a bad time watching this movie. Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to say? How could you not enjoy it?
It's
I
okay.
mean, no. I think there's something to it though, because it's like I think this could be like a good like litmus test. It's like, are
Absolutely.
you cool?
Well, yeah, I
So
know. It,
I don't know
Are we
if
gonna be friends or not?
I
don't
don't
get
know
me
if
wrong.
either
I'm
of you
still
have
saying
seen
they
or
can't
if you have
hang, but
talked about this movie, but that is actually how I feel about Synecdoche, New York.
I haven't seen that yet, dude. It's been on my list for years, literally.
I watched it. It's about 3 hours long, and I had a terrible time
Oh,
for every minute of that movie. And like
word.
looking back on it, I'm like, this is a good movie with incredible performances, with a really interesting concept. Like everything about it is above board. Watching it, I was like, I really fucking am having a bad time right now.
I mean, you want to talk about fucking writers using their trauma? Charlie Kaufman, man.
yeah. Oh man.
Yeah,
That's that man's bread and butter.
dude. I have such mixed feelings about it. Like I just love him, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, you were like so meta that it's almost like vomit inducing.
I'm
Yeah,
very
no, there's a
50-50.
lot of the antics that he pulled are just dumb. I'm like, oh, what an interesting bit that you committed to so hard.
Yeah,
Congratulations on the concept.
like I love being John Malkovich, right?
Great movie. Absolutely great movie.
But he continued that bit for 2 movies. Like he made a movie about the dude who wrote being John Malkovich
No.
after making being John Malkovich,
Well,
which
he
is
isn't it,
itself an up its own ass movie.
isn't it an adaptation like he's writing a movie about the dude writing the movie he's in.
Yeah, and
Dude,
he's
I
played
couldn't explain
by
it to you,
Nicolas
man.
Cage playing twins.
Yeah, I'm very mixed on
I
old Chucky K.
liking it. I was high as shit when I watched it, but I remember like figuring it out while it was playing, and I was like, "Whoa, this is so clever!" But looking back on it, I'm kind of like, "Dude, you really came up with that idea and did it, huh?"
Yeah. No, it's kind of the way I look at some of these movies and directors. I love to think about film school and film bros and the kind of mentality of some people that the mentality they have when they approach making movies. And it's like, I won't forgive David Lynch. Sorry, I won't forgive. I'll forgive David Lynch with Eraserhead being like cynical and this very specific viewpoint on the world of like cities are gross and bad and fatherhood's scary, because I'm like, yeah, a 25-year-old was making this movie. He had only existed so much, and he was making the movie based off of the experiences he had had up until that point and the ways that
Yeah,
he had been able to process them. And it's like you look at his later work and you're like, oh yeah, this guy grew and changed and developed and matured. And then when you look at something like Charlie Kaufman, with kind of sitting on the same idea, I'm like, you could look at it in like, oh, what an interesting way to look at the same idea through different perspectives. Or you're like, maybe this guy just kind of sat with the same bit and really didn't
yeah,
push himself to grow.
yeah. I mean, that's the main issue with him. It's like, dude, like you really don't you get bored with this? You know, it's like you're doing this like you have like this corkscrew going up your ass. You know what I mean?
What's
It's
that,
like,
like, there's like a community quote where someone's just like, I hate Charlie Kaufman. Like, damn, we got work in the morning, Charlie Kaufman. I can't figure this shit out.
that's pretty funny, actually.
So, I'm like, Charlie Kaufman's meta sensibilities, I think, truly come full force in Synecdoche, New York. And I don't want to, it's not necessarily a spoiler or anything, because I do want you to see this movie with, open mind. But like, there's this whole sequence where he's trying to he's trying to write a new story, he's trying to write a new play. And then when he eventually gets a grant to do it, he starts like doing the play within the play because the play is his life. And it quite literally is like there's a whole bit where he himself walks into the studio in which they have built a miniature studio that contains the show that they're doing.
Like
And
the
I'm like,
Oh my
rehearsal.
god! All right,
yeah, and I'm like watching
it's
it
like
being like,
shut the fuck
Jesus
up.
Christ.
Yeah, okay, dude. If I had seen Schenectady, New York, I probably would feel more similar to how you feel because I didn't know that he like kept doing it.
Yeah.
That's a little insane.
It kind of sounds like Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just can sound like that.
And I'm like, when you think about his like classic or comedy, there is like, I don't know, there's a it makes sense because a lot of his bits are always built on doing the same thing, and how many times will he do it, you
Yeah,
know?
dude. Did you see I'm Thinking of Ending Things?
No,
The
but
one with the chick from Chernobyl,
yeah.
and she's also in that new or the not new, I guess. The dude who made the one with like the what's it called? A24, the Irish dude who like changes bodies or whatever.
Oh
Plays like
no.
30 characters or something in the movie. Men,
Uh
men.
oh
Yeah, sorry, that
yes,
took
I
a while for me to
forgot
spell.
about
Men,
that.
men, men, men,
The
men,
girl,
men,
yeah,
men,
the girl
men.
who was in Men was in that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's that's a bit different than I guess the other stuff we've been talking about. It's not really about like a writer or anything, but the whole you should watch it. I mean, but like the general idea is like you see this whole world that this dude with like Alzheimer's created in his mind, and it's very like Lynchian and shit. It's
Huh.
pretty cool, man. But you don't know it's like in his head until later, so I guess that's a spoiler. But
And I will most likely forget that detail if by the time I watch that movie.
yeah, yeah. It's cool though, man. I think it's on Netflix.
Okay. No, I'll check it out. Absolutely.
All right, I got two more reviews, then we're gonna do final thoughts.
Beautiful.
All right, this first one's kind of long. It's from Isaiah_AD. They're a pro member of Letterboxd, meaning that they pay for this site.
Wow.
And Isaiah says, I hate artsy films in general, but also that they have a bunch of symbolism and a hidden meaning. Just give me a basic ass story and be entertaining. That's why Cars is the greatest cinema of all time.
That has to be a joke.
The only remotely entertaining thing that happened in this film was Paul getting yelled at that took approximately 10 seconds of screen time. Who the fuck is Paul?
The guy in the
Serious?
lobby.
I don't remember.
He
him.
said Cars though, so I feel like he's fucking around, right?
I would have to assume that he's fucking around because he brought up Cars. But Paul is the guy. I think there's a scene where there's like a bell ringing in the
Oh,
lobby.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Comes
Yeah,
out of fucking nowhere.
I'm looking at their page right now. Ranking movie I watched from worst to... No, they have Eraserhead as the #1 worst movie they saw, at least of this year so far.
That person paid for the site.
Yeah.
Word.
They got Renfield and Argo ahead of it, so...
What a combo. Renfield and Argo and
Yeah.
Eraserhead as a triple feature.
What a guy.
All right, and this last bad review comes from Slifer Sky Dragon. They say, and I quote, thought of some rap lyrics while watching this movie, and it's something like, I'm David Lynch in this bitch trying to get some head that will erase me.
I mean, he's got bars. He's got flow. He's got rhythm.
Ugh. That was so cringy. Oh my gosh.
I'm inviting him to
take
come
that.
on the show.
He should watch the rest of the David Lynch catalog with you. You should watch every episode of Twin Peaks.
Yeah. So if you're listening, Slifer Sky Dragon, which I hope you are, come on the show.
Is that like 4FOR or the number 4?
It's like Life R Sky.
Life R Sky.
Should I put all of their letterboxd in the description? Be
Yes.
like, these are who we mentioned.
No, we gotta dox people. That's the only way to get the pod some some heat.
Some heat.
Yeah, dude, we should just talk shit until we like make enough enemies to become popular.
You don't get to 1 million friends without making a couple enemies.
Yep.
That break into it.
All right. Let's start wrapping up. What are some final thoughts on ol' E-Head? Ol' E-Head.
Eraserhead is like ridiculous. It's a goofy comedy, and I will stand by that to the day I die. Especially because I love a thing that David Lynch does, which is he creates reasons for the in the world absurdity and the stuff that's going to make you uncomfortable. Like in the first scene when Steve walks in and meets the family, there's this really weird sound that's like organic and suckling and
We
this
didn't
like
even talk
gross
about the sound. Wow.
And then we cut to a dog is nursing a litter of puppies. So for minutes, we are listening to this very odd, off-putting, uncomfortable soundscape. And then we realize, oh, it's because there's a thing in the world. When Mary goes home and she's like, I'm going to go stay with my parents. She comes back and she leans down next to the bed and starts like shaking the bed. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? Right. And it goes on for so long. And it's because she's been trying to pull out a suitcase the entire time. Like every time there's some weird bullshit in the world, he sets up something for it. And I really
That's
enjoy
cool.
that. I really do enjoy that little element because it's not just weird for weird's sake. It's like weird because of something.
I agree, that's cool.
So with Eraserhead, it's a very cool like vision into a young director's mind as he is just beginning his journey in filmmaking. And it only exists because of very specific circumstances. And I think that makes it very special. I think it's cool to watch it knowing the context behind making it because it's like, yeah, this is bullshit sets built in an old stable and in dried out pools. And it's made by only a handful of people. And It came together into something really, really fantastic. So regardless of how you actually feel about it, you have to respect it for
Yeah.
its craftsmanship.
Yeah, I love that ragtag angle with it. Yeah, I won't say this is one that I rewatch a lot. I appreciate it. Anytime I think about it, it tickles my brain. When I see Eraserhead baby memes, it fills me with joy. I got a lot of warm feelings for Eraserhead, which is a very fucking weird movie. I love the world and how ugly and weird and surreal it is, and it makes me laugh. I would give it buy it on Blu-ray.
I this is one of those movies where like I feel like I need to take a shower afterwards in the best way possible. Like, have you ever just like rolled around in some mud like as a kid?
Yep. Yep.
Like it's just like fun. Like, you just roll around in some mud and
I
get
have
all
I have
grimy and dirty, and it doesn't matter because it's just fun. That's how it feels watching this.
I have the very funniest final thought to give you right off of that. How dare you bring up a perfect moment? The documentary called The Art Life, the very first memory that David Lynch shares is him and a friend named Dickie Smith sitting in a mud puddle that his dad dug out and filled with water, and he
Sick.
was a little toddler splashing around in the mud playing. And he was like, that's what a life is all about. It's playing in mud, feeling it in your fingers, and just vibing.
Dude, AJ, you gotta try it, man. It's awesome.
I've definitely rolled around in the mud. I
Okay,
was a
man.
muddy boy. You think I didn't get dirty? I could get dirty with the best of them. I was
All
a
right.
rebel kid.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, that was Eraserhead. Thank you all for listening. Danny, do you have anything you want to plug?
Go check out All Things To Lemon. That's TOO Lemon. That's my production company. We make everything entertainment, specifically short films and music videos these days. And if you want a recommendation on the first thing you should check out, that would be American History's Greatest Mysteries with Casey Donovan, which is
That's
a
very.
very Eraserhead thing.
I was gonna say that's very surreal, very Lynchian to throw
Yeah,
around
no.
the word.
Both the episodes Momo and The Strange Tale of Saint Toads are very Eraserhead.
Yeah. So
That
check
sounds
out
awesome. I
Danny.
want to check that shit out.
Yeah, check it out, man. Check out Danny. Check out his stuff. Come back next week. We'll be talking about something with someone. I'm not gonna say anymore because I
Oh,
jinxed
I
it when I
love
Jaren.
their work.
Yeah, you're a big fan of, and then I like put in somebody's name, Adolf Hitler. No,
Oh God,
Danny.
I never said anything. You can't get me on that.
Just keep on coming back. Listen to us over and over again. We like it when our episodes get a lot of listens. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
But until next time, tune in next. Oh wait, no. Here's where I'm gonna put Gabe's review.
So I just finished Eraserhead. Also, what's up, guys? That was in yeah. It was definitely the oddest movie I've seen in a while. I don't know why I got this feeling, but when I looked at his like child, I don't know why I got very Geiger-esque vibes from the special effects. Lots of reminiscence to like the design of like the face huggers and the chest bursters from Alien. I don't know why that like weird fleshy, liquidy texture it has. Fucking disgusting. Um, yeah, this movie feels like a nightmare. It feels like you woke up and just wrote down the premise of a few of his nightmares and then made a film about it. And I think there's some inner like workings about like the anxieties of like sex and the anxiety and some social anxiety as well. The character seems very anxious and reserved, which I think might also just kind of talk about social anxiety, but sexual anxiety, which I feel like also is in a way like tied directly to social anxiety. But yeah, that movie fucking really made me want to like stop looking at it. I think that's intentional. That's not like I'm not like upset with the movie. I feel like it did a good job of trying to do what it set out to do, which was make you uncomfortable and make you want it to end. just like a nightmare, really. So yeah, kudos to David Lynch. What a fucking freak. Anyways, I'll see you at court.